Okay, so today we are going to be starting our Mola project. What I have come up with is a tray system. And in this tray system you will have about 4 or 5 pairs of scissors, and you also have a bunch of sheets of colored paper. Lots of different colors. Remember, we're going to be using a warm, cool pattern for this, so you have to be real thoughtful when you're choosing your colors. And I'm going to ask that you give the trays back to me as neatly as I am giving them back to you. So this is just so you can see the setup. What we're going to be doing today is each one of you is going to be getting a silhouette, or sort of like a shadow outline of some native things to the Sambala Islands. So I have a flower, a crab, a hog, pig, whatever, a bird, tropical bird, parrots. This is a turtle, and a fish. So, you know, you probably won't have the same animal as someone at your group. So I also have a frog, which is the one that I am going to be doing as an example. So this is the frog. I didn't want to bore you with cutting it out necessarily, but and the crab, on the frog, possibly on the parrot, and a couple others. There are some tricky areas here. So like going around the frog's feet can be a little tricky when you're cutting, but you have to be super careful to cut this out exactly on the lines and not cut off any toes or anything, otherwise it's not going to look like a frog. So I've got this much of it cut out, and now I'm starting to get to my tricky area. So I'm just going to go as far as I can, sort of up in here. Now, this is a couple tricks I want to show you. One is I don't need all of this white paper anymore. So what I can do is I can cut it, or I can actually just rip it. I'm done with all of this. I want to get it out of my way. So now I don't have all this paper flopping around while I'm trying to cut. The other thing that I want to remind you is that the sharpest part of the scissors is back down in here. So if you want to make these tiny little cuts up here, you're not going to get as smooth of a cut as if you use the scissors back here. That does not mean that you have to cut closed all the time, all the way. You can cut this much depending on how much of a cut you need. Okay, so I'm actually going to sort of come into the middle and cut this out, and then go back in and cut in some of these smaller spaces. It does not matter how you cut up the white space. What matters is that you have one smooth black shape here of an animal without any toes or any other parts of the animal cut off. So I'm just going to cut, and you'll see that I'm cutting in the back of the scissors, and I'm being very careful to stay here. Okay, now from here, this part is really thin, so actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of make my way over this way, and I will come back to that. So I'm just sort of cutting in and doing all of the areas that are easier for me to get with my scissors, get at with my scissors. Okay, so now that my scissors have cut in here, it's easier for me to sort of turn and get that last little part. Okay, whereas before it was too much of a like an angle there. Okay, and I'll just clean that up a little bit. All right, now the reason you want to be so careful with this is because you're going to be tracing this shape several times, and if you don't start off with a really solid shape that looks like the animal, then you're going to run into some trouble. Okay, so if I have, you know, a little area in there, I just got to go carefully cut it out. I have this little white, there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to cut very carefully. Now I'm using the same scissors that you guys have. I realize they're not the biggest or the sharpest, but the reason I'm using these is to show you that you can use these and get the job done. Actually, when I purchased these scissors, thought that they were bigger than what they are, and they did not come that way. They were smaller, unfortunately. So okay, so I'm just very carefully cutting out the shape. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pause the video and finish cutting this out. I just wanted to show you how you can sort of cut in to make it easier. You know, you got to do what's easiest for you. Maybe you have a different method. All right, when we come back, you'll have a finished frog. Okay, so now I have my frog very carefully cut out. So going back to the actual mola that I showed you guys last time, here is it looks like some sort of a swan or something because it's got this really long neck, but you can see where there are these layers of color in here. And so that's what we want to create, is that mola look with the different layers of color. So we are going to do 3 layers of our animal. Okay, so to do that, each layer has to be a little bit bigger than the first one. I will show you on this example as well. So looking at the crab, my first layer is not the black paper that I cut out, that's my template. My first layer is red, my second layer is blue, and my third layer is yellow. And each time they're gonna get a little bit bigger. So what I'm gonna demonstrate for you is how to trace around your shape to get a nice even layer. So what I need to do first is I need to choose a color. It doesn't really matter if it's warm or cool, you gotta have a starting point. And I'm gonna go with green just because frogs are green. So one thing about the paper, we can save paper by not using the entire sheet. So I am actually gonna be tracing around my template right along the edge here. So I don't need to put it in the middle. I can actually put it way up here like this and save all of this space, because we're going to be keeping every scrap of paper that we have. There shouldn't be anything thrown away, because we're going to be using little pieces and stuff to go around the edges when we do the background. So we're going to keep all of the paper in the tray. So what I'm going to do with my pencil is I'm going to hold my template down very carefully, and I'm going to follow along the edges. Now this is paper, so it's going to be it's not as thick as, let's say, if I used cardboard or something. So, oops, I have to make sure that I'm holding it down firmly, but following along the edges carefully. If I'm not following my pencil right along the edges, I'm going to end up with some wacky shape that does not look like a frog in this case, or whatever animal or object you may have. So getting around the feet, I have to be really careful. My pencil follows around. Now you're going to be doing a lot of tracing and a lot of cutting. So the cutting is going to need to be done very carefully and very slowly in order to make this look neat. I don't remember if I did, okay. If you should accidentally move your object, all you have to do is line it kind of back up like a puzzle. Make sure it's all lined up. I want to make sure that this is all where it should be. Okay, so I'm just lining it back up, and then you can continue. I have to be careful because I don't want my pencil to go underneath the paper. I want it to go around the outside, so this part's a little tricky. This is going to be your very first layer. So actually you're sort of cutting the frog out twice. Oops, I forgot, but that's okay. I'm just going to connect that there. Okay, so right now I'm going to pause the video, and what I'm going to do is very carefully cut out this frog shape. Alright, so I have cut out my frog. Remember the one I traced on the green paper I've cut out, so it's actually identical. And now I'm pretty much done with this one, so I'm going to put this one off to the side. I have all of these scraps here. What I am not going to do is crumple them up into a ball. I'm going to take them and I'm going to set them back into the tray. I might actually just sort of carefully pull them off of my desk into my hands and put them in here. All these little pieces can be used again later, so we're just going to neatly put the scraps back in the tray. Alright, so this is layer number 1. Now we need to make layer number 2, but this is green, which is a cool color, so now I need a warm color. So I'm going to go through and choose a warm color, and I have a color in mind. I like to do orange, so I'm going to do orange. Okay, now I don't want to put this again in the middle because I'm not going to use the whole paper, but I can't put it really close to the top because I need to have some space around the edge, because that's what I'm going to be doing, is drawing a line going around the outside evenly. Okay, I'm going to get a scratch sheet of paper here I want to show you a couple things. When I am drawing my line around, I have to hold this still, but what I am going to not do is push against the edge of the paper. I need to leave a space, okay? So if I start up here, that means that I want to keep this much space all the way around as I draw. So if you're drawing evenly all the way around, as you start to come to these bumps, you sort of have to follow it evenly. And the problem that students ran into last year was they would get too close and then too far away and then too close, and then in here would be too, so here's really close, here's super far. We want a consistent space right here. This is a good section all the way around. Okay, so not too close, not too far. You got to keep it consistent, and that's the tricky part. Use your eraser, erase as needed. All right, so I should have enough room even up on top and sides to do that. So I'm gonna hold it still. I am using a black marker because on the YouTube video, for some reason, pencil does not like to show up. So I want to draw so you can see it. So I'm gonna draw very carefully. Turn the paper as you need to. Follow each bump evenly all the way around. Now I can't get all the way in there, so I'm just gonna sort of do the little bit that I can. Following very carefully, holding that frog in place. Don't let it move. Can't go all the way down in there, because if I'm keeping an even line, it's too far down. It'll be too close. Even all the way around. I'm sure I'm making this look a little bit easy. You might need to erase. Stop and look. Did I get too close? Is it too far? Is it even? Do I need to fix some areas? Don't forget that bump right there for the eye. Okay. All right, that's pretty good. Actually, if I was drawing with pencil, I might actually erase this because this looks a little bit close, but I used a marker so I can't. All right, next step, you guessed it, more cutting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to cut out this shape with scissors, and then I will be back to show you the third layer. All right, so now I have my second layer. This is still looks like a frog. It looks bigger, and the feet look kind of funny. So as you make your shapes, they're gonna get a little bigger and look a little funny. But you can see when I put my first layer over it, now I have this sort of second layer that goes even all the way around. So we're making 3 layers for our animals or objects. So that means that I need 1 more before I can sort of put it all together. But I'm not going to use this first layer. I'm going to make my next layer from layer number 2, or the second color that I used. First, I'm going to put all my little scraps on top of what's left here. I'm going to put it back in my tray because I'm done with it, but we might use some of these scraps later. So let's look at my color pattern. Cool green, warm orange, which means now I need another cool color. So I want to do blue, but I think I want to do this medium blue. So I'm going to choose this color. So we have warm green, cool green, warm orange, and then cool blue. All right, so I'm gonna take my second layer, I'm gonna put it on the page so that I'm not using the whole thing, but I wanna make sure I have enough room that I can trace around. So I'm gonna move it here. It looks like I have enough room to go all the way around. Okay, and again, I'm using a marker. You're gonna use a pencil. This will be my last layer. Again, keeping it even as I go, not getting too close, not getting too far away. This last layer should be much easier to cut out because you are getting rid of some of the little details, because every time you trace, it's getting a little bit bigger. Okay, so in here, I just go as far as I can. That's all I can do there. Tracing around. This is where the frogs, oops, oh, that's okay. I know how to fix that. Line it back up so everything is even. There, that looks about right. No harm. Can't get any farther than that. I almost maybe went a little too far there, but it's all right. It's not too bad. Okay, so this is my third and final layer, and as you can see, it's not really looking like a frog much anymore. It's looking just like a big bumpy shape, but when you see all the pieces put together, then you'll see how it works out. Okay, pause the video, cut this out. Okay, so I've cut out my last and final layer. I put all my little pieces sort of on the biggest piece, putting it back in my tray. So now I can sort of assemble, before I start to glue, I can assemble my pieces. So it's going to look like this. And as I go, I want to be careful to make sure that I've glued it so that it's pretty even all the way around. So I'm going to start with my first 2 layers. All right, I'm going to flip this over and put some glue on the back. Don't go crazy with the glue. The most important areas are in some of these little smaller pieces. You want these to try to lay flat and not stick up. So, you know, along the edges and stuff, you want to make sure you get the glue along the edges. All right, so as I'm putting this down, I want to make sure that things are even. That looks pretty good. I'm following, well, I'm seeing right here. The glue is still wet for a minute, so you can always move it around. Even if you know, you can always pull it up. There you go. Okay, so now I'll make sure it's nice and smooth, and I'll sort of go, I'll see this part needs a little bit more glue. Okay, so there's layer 1 and 2. Now I'm going to flip this over, glue this, making sure I get glue up in each of these little frog toes on the hind legs. I'm not going crazy with the glue, just enough to make sure it sticks. Here's my third layer. You can see how you can see the colors and how they sort of pop off of each other. The orange and blue happen to be complementary colors, so those really work well together. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go back and make sure I don't have any. This needs a little bit more glue here. And you can always touch this up later. Okay, so now I have my three layers, and that's all you're required to do for your animal. Last thing I might do is go through, I see some pencil lines, so you can sort of clean those up, okay? Then I need to glue it on a full sheet of paper. So if I'm following my warm, cool, I've got cool, warm, cool, and that means my final sheet of paper needs to be a warm color. So I'm gonna do probably like a yellow. I'm gonna try that out. Yeah, I like that, but I could also do red. So I'm gonna try the red. I don't think I like that as much. I've already done orange. My other option is pink for a warm color. Ooh, here's a darker. This yellow seems a little bit, yeah, I like that one. So try out the different colors and see what you like. Now, once you have all of your layers glued together, the last thing is for you to glue your pieces, like, well, it's one piece actually now, but you need to glue this in the center of your paper. Please make sure it's in the center. So before I like push it down, I'm just gonna set it there because I can always move it. That looks pretty good. Smooth it out. And from here, what you're gonna do is use little scraps of paper to work on a background, and that will be a separate video. But this is just to show you how to get the layers of the animal and glue it on a full sheet of paper.